Shalom Aleichem, this is Rabbi Kovacs, and for the 25th day of Nisan, Erev Shabbat Achrei Mot, Mishnah Yomi is beginning the 9th and final chapter of Nazir, just a few days left, and Masechet Sotah is on the horizon. So let's pick up chapter 9, chapter Tet, Mishnah Aleph. Hagoyim, the non-Jewish nations, Ein Lahem Nazirut, they cannot become a Nazir. Now they might grow their hair long and abstain from wine, but maybe that's because they're rock and rollers and they're trying to get clean. But the Mishnah contrasts, Noshim ve'avadim yesh lahem nazirot. But women and servants, even though these are Eved Kanani, they're sort of quasi-Jewish, they've gone to the mikveh, they keep some laws, they can indeed become a Nazir. Now, usually women are exempt from time-dependent commandments, and a Nazirut, of course, is 30 days. That sounds pretty time-dependent. But in Bamidbar chapter 6, it says, Isha, any man or woman in the Jewish people can become a Nazir if he or she so desires. Now, the Mishnah explains, Homer benashim, there's a stringency by female Nazirot, mivabodim, compared to an Eved. Shu kofe et ovdo, a master can force his servant to violate Nazirot. For instance, the servant has a heart condition and he has to drink red wine every once in a while to be healthy. Then he could say, listen, you have to drink the red wine to be healthy so you can do your job. Or perhaps the master has to make a funeral and he needs someone to carry the coffin. There's nobody else to do it. He could have the Eved violate his Nazirut, end his Nazirut, get a heter in order to carry the coffin. Ve'eno kofe et ishto, but a man may not force his wife to end or violate her Nazirut. Now the Mishnah compares the other direction. Homer be'avodim mibenashim, there's a stringency by an Eved compared to a wife. Shehu mefer nidre ishto, a husband, as we explained in detail in Masechet Nedarim, and here in Nazir again, he can annul a neder, including a Nazirut, his wife makes on the day he hears about the vow. Ve'eno mefer nidre ovdo, but if his Eved, who's working for him, makes a vow, the husband has no ability to annul such a vow. Though we mentioned that the Adon can have his Eved, who is a Nazir, drink wine or attend the funeral. So, Hefer la'avdo, if he did undo it with respect to the Eved, Yotza lechairut, mashlim Nazruto. So then when he becomes free, when he becomes a fully emancipated ex-Eved Kanani, he has to finish his term of Nazirut that he vowed when he was an Eved. But Avar make a neged panav, if he actually just runs away, he becomes a runaway Eved. Rabbi Meir Omer lo yishter. Rabbi Meir says he can't drink wine because really he needs to go back to the Adon who is letting him drink wine. He's subject to being a Nazir right now, and if he wants to drink wine, he has to go back to the original Adon who allowed him to drink wine. Rabbi Yossi Omer yishter. Yossi says he can, in fact, drink wine. The idea being eventually the Adon will find him and bring him back and was letting him drink wine. And of course, he'll be observing Nazirut later when he's a free man. Now, it's interesting. There's an exception to this rule of a runaway Eved. If an Eved was living outside of Israel and ran away to Eretz Yisrael, he is not allowed to, the Adon is not allowed to reacquire him and have him work for him again. So in that case, it seems the ex-Eved would observe his Nazirut immediately after he's made Aliyah and escape to Eretz Yisrael. Let's go on to Mishnah Beit. Nazir Shgilach, a Nazir took the haircut, concluded his Nazirut, V'nodela, and then he was informed, Shu Tameh, that he had been exposed to Tumah. He didn't know about it. He assumed he was Tahar, he assumed he was never contaminated. He finished his Nazirut, and then Nebuch, they told him, you had been exposed. Im Tuma Yedua, if it was a known Tuma, people knew about it. It was, a gravestone people knew about. He just wasn't aware. He sat on the gravestone. Soter. He loses his term of Nazirut. He's going to have to start all over. But ve'im tuma tatahom, if it's a deep tuma, and this is something people just really don't know about. For instance, God forbid, there was a dead body trapped under a pile of rubble. The Nazir had sat on that pile of rubble. No one knew there had been a dead body there until later. Eino soter. He does not lose his Nazirut over again. There's no way he could have known he had been tameh, he had been impure. Im ad shelo gilach. Now the Mishnah brings a variant case here. If it was before he took the haircut that he found out he had been exposed to tum'ah, bein kach ubein kach soter, then whether it was a known or an unknown mysterious source of tum'ah, he has to start over again. Ketzad, what is a case of this? Yorad litbol b'ma'ara. He went down to do tevilah, to immerse in a mikveh, down in a cave. And kamuvan, it's dark in the cave, you can't always see what's in the water. V'nimtza, and then afterwards they found met tzaf al pi hamara. There was a kazayit, or a little piece, or a finger, God forbid, from a dead body that was actually floating on the water of the mikveh. Now, the Nazir doesn't know if when he went down to the mikveh in this dark cave, he actually touched this piece or not. Tameh. So we assume he had touched it and he is impure. And this is considered a tuma yadua, because if they had brought in a torch, a flashlight, and they looked, they probably would have seen it, and he probably touched it, and it's a safek of tuma, a doubtful case of tuma in Reshut Yachid, in a private domain, so he's considered to have touched it. Nimsa mishuka, but if they found a piece of, God forbid, a corpse that was stuck to the bottom, bekarkamar, it was like trapped on the floor. Nobody was able to see it at the time that the Nazir went there, so then it really depends how much water he went into. Yared lahaker, if he just went into the water just to cool off, not necessarily to fully immerse himself. Tahor, he's considered to be tahor. He doesn't have to start his Nazirut over, because this was a tuma hatahom. It was a deep tuma, an unknown source of impurity. Letaher mitumat met, if he was going down into the cave because he had been exposed to corpse tuma, and he had to go to the mikveh as part of the purification process, tameh, he has to start over again. Now, this is, even though this, God forbid, this dead body stuck to the floor of the mikveh in the cave, no one knew about it, it was tumat at home. Why shehezkat tameh? If someone's in a hazaka, a prior state, a prior status of being tameh, he remains tameh. We assume he had contact with it, and we say, well, listen, the mikveh didn't work because you're already tameh. You're still tameh because you might have touched that corpse. V'chezkat tahor, but someone in a status of being tahor, he was a Nazir tahor, and he just went down to cool off, it was the summer, he remains tahor. We assume he did not touch that source of impurity. Sheragloim ledavar, because he has legs to stand on. So this is part of the halacha l'Moshe Messinai, the special rule of tumat at home, of an unknown tuma. We say if a person was already tahor at a hazaka, had a status of being pure, of being tahor, and they might have touched it tumat home, we assume they did not. He has legs to stand on. Whereas the Nazir who was already tameh and needed to use that mikveh to be tahor, to be pure, we assume he did not gain purity. He might have touched that corpse. Yashar Kol Chachem, a good Shabbos.